Baking in the Fairy Mound, retold by Cassandra Rasmussen. Art by Kiri Østergaard Leonard. Long ago, people in Scotland told stories about the Sheehan, or fairy folk. The tales warned weary travelers not to follow fairy lights that twinkled in the night, or else they could be trapped in the fairy realm. One misty evening, a young girl named Maude strolled through the woods. As she walked, she spotted colorful floating lights ahead on the path. Maude stopped. Her grandmother had been taken by fairies many years ago. Maude knew to stay away from the bright, beautiful lights, but she could not resist. Maude followed the lights through a door in the side of a hill. Inside was a giant table covered with delicious food. Chocolate cakes so rich they made her mouth water, sweet berries so plump they could burst, and strange but tasty-looking foods she had never seen before. Maude had been walking for a while, and she was very hungry. She began to nibble on a slice of fresh bread. Pop! Suddenly, tall people with long spears and angry expressions appeared all around her. "You have stolen food from the fairy folk," the fairy king thundered. I'm sorry," Maude stammered. "It was just one piece of bread." "Because you have eaten food from the fairy realm, you will be trapped here until you repay your debt," the fairy king said. "You must bake bread for our feasts until you have used all the flour in a barrel as tall as you are." Maude was taken to the fairy kitchen and shown a barrel of flour that was indeed as tall as she was. She began to cry. She missed her home, and she wished she had not followed the fairy lights. "Why are you crying?" asked a kind voice. Maude turned. It was a very old woman, with hair as white and wispy as mist. "I cannot go home until I make enough bread to use all the flour in this barrel," Maude whimpered. "Well," said the old woman, "let's get to work." The old woman taught Maude how to bake bread so warm and soft that it would warm and soften the hearts of the fairies who ate it. At first, Maude's arms ached from kneading so much dough, and her knuckles were red and raw. But every day, Maude woke up early and baked until she was used to the work. 2 weeks later, Maude looked in the flour barrel and frowned. "I use flour every day, but the barrel still looks almost full." The old woman hobbled over to the barrel. "The fairies must have put a spell on it. Do not worry. I will teach you songs to sing while you knead the dough. The songs will break the curse." Maude sang the songs that the old woman taught her, and the barrel became lighter each day. Finally, there was only enough flour left in the barrel for one more loaf of bread. "I want this loaf to be just for you," Maude said to the old woman. "You have been so kind to me. Thank you." The old woman smiled, and 100 wrinkles danced around her eyes. "Child, there is one more thing I must tell you," she said. "When the fairies release you, they will grant you one wish. Be careful. If you wish for something like treasure or jewels, they will trick you and bring you back here. Wish for something that will not let them harm you." And with that, the old woman left the kitchen. As Maude made her last loaf of bread, she worried about the wish. What could she ask for that would not give the fairies a chance to trick her? Maude pulled the loaf of bread out of the oven, its warm smell filling the kitchen. Suddenly, the fairy king appeared before her. "Well done, girl," said the fairy king. "Today you may go home, but first you may ask for 3 wishes." "3?" Maude replied, for she had only expected one. She paused, and at last she said, "I wish that I and all of my children will be hard workers." The king frowned. "All right," he said. "What about your second wish?" He smirked mischievously. "While you were here, your family lost everything. Won't you ask for gold?" Maude sensed this was a trap. She shook her head. I wish for protection for myself, the old woman, and all of my family living now and yet to be born. Now the Fairy King grew angry.
Third wish, he sputtered. While you were here, your grandmother became sick. You should wish for gold to buy her medicine.
Maude laughed. That cannot be, she said. My grandmother disappeared years ago. She held her head high. Here is my third wish. Give this loaf of bread to the old woman for me. The Fairy King let out a wild roar. Maude just smiled, left the loaf of bread on a table in the kitchen, and walked out of the Fairy Mound into the sunlight. She looked back at the hill one last time. The door had vanished. When Maude returned home, she found that her family was well. No time had passed in the human world during her time in the fairy realm, but one thing was very different. There, sitting in the kitchen, was the old woman. It's you! Maude cried, running over to embrace her. Child, the old woman said, stroking Maude's hair, I am your grandmother. The fairies cast a spell on you and made you forget. She smiled with happy tears in her eyes. When you wished for protection for your family, you broke the fairies' spell on me. I am home. For generations, Maude's family was known for its hard workers, delicious bread making, and the fairy songs all the children knew from the time they were born. A sort of magic always seemed to protect them wherever they went, whatever their adventures.